A man crawls through snow up to his chest. His face is bleeding where the ice has cut him. His lungs feel like they are full of broken glass. He is the richest man in Silver Pine, Colorado. And he is certain, absolutely certain, that he is about to find two frozen bodies in a hole in the ground. A young widow, a 6-year-old boy. He had warned her. The whole town had warned her. That cabin won't survive the frost. Sell the land. Come down to the laundry. She had refused. She had done something worse than refuse. She had taken a shovel, and she had started digging. Now the storm has come, the worst storm in 50 years, and Jacob Sterling is climbing the mountain to find what is left of her. He doesn't know yet that he is wrong about everything. He doesn't know that under 60 feet of granite, a fire is burning that will not go out, that a loaf of bread is rising in a stone oven, that a child is sleeping warm under a single thin blanket. He doesn't know that the woman he pitied is about to save his wife, his daughters, his whole town. This is the story of Eleanor Wade, the widow they buried in their minds, the widow who invited the mountain into her home, and the winter that taught a hard man how to listen. But to understand how Jacob Sterling ended up on his knees in the snow, we have to go back, 8 months back, to a cold spring morning in April of 1885, to a graveside, to the moment Eleanor Wade became a widow. The aspens were just starting to bud when they buried Elias. Eleanor stood at the edge of the grave. Her black dress was too thin for the wind. She did not feel the cold. She did not feel anything. Beside her stood Silas, 6 years old, his small hand clutching his father's leather sketchbook. He had not let go of it since the men brought Elias home. He slept with it, ate with it, held it now while the gravedigger's shovel scraped against frozen earth. Reverend Whitfield was speaking. Eleanor heard the words, but they did not enter her. Beloved husband, faithful servant, the Lord giveth. She watched her breath rise in the air and disappear. Elias was 31 years old, a geologist. He had walked these mountains with a notebook in one hand and a hammer in the other. He had loved rocks the way other men loved horses. He had loved Eleanor more. A rock slide had killed him. The men said it was quick. She did not believe them. Nothing about death was quick. Death was a slow thing that kept happening every morning when she woke up and reached for him, and he was not there. The townspeople of Silver Pine stood at a respectful distance. Their faces were arranged into the proper shape of sympathy. Eleanor saw past every one of them. She saw Jacob Sterling. He was the tallest man in the crowd, the widest. He stood the way a man stands who owns the lumber mill and has built every decent house in town. His hat was in his hands. His eyes were not on the grave. They were on her cabin, just visible up the slope. He was looking at it the way a carpenter looks at a chair that is about to break. Eleanor knew, in that moment, what was coming. She did not know it would take the form of pity. She thought pity would be gentler than this. The first basket arrived 3 days after the funeral. Mrs. Cobb from the dry goods store, a loaf of bread, a jar of preserves, a small wedge of cheese. Just thinking of you, dear. She would not come inside. She handed the basket over the threshold and looked past Eleanor's shoulder into the cabin with an expression Eleanor could not read at first. Later she understood. It was the expression people wore at the funeral home when they looked at a body. Sad, detached, already gone. The second basket came the next day, the third the day after that. By the end of April, Eleanor had so much dry bread, she did not know what to do with it. She fed some to the squirrels. She cried over a jar of huckleberry jam from a woman whose name she could not remember. Pity was supposed to be a kindness. It did not feel like a kindness. It felt like a stone settling into her chest. A little heavier each time someone said, "Bless your heart," and would not meet her eyes. She started to understand. They were not bringing her food. They were saying goodbye. She was a problem the town had already solved. In their minds, she had already failed. Already left. Already disappeared into the laundry house in town with rough red hands and a son who would be raised by other women's pity. Eleanor smiled. She thanked them. She closed the door, and she felt herself dying, one basket at a time. Summer came. The aspens turned green. The wind dropped. Silas began to speak again, in halting sentences, as if he were learning the words back. He drew with his father's charcoal nubs on flat stones. He drew the same thing over and over, a man with a hammer, A mountain. Eleanor did the work. She tended the small garden. She mended the same dress 3 times. She read at night by a single oil lamp, books Elias had collected. Geology, mineralogy, a worn copy of Pilgrim's Progress his mother had given him. She did not open his journals. She could not. To open them would be to hear his voice again, and she did not think she could survive that. So she let them sit in the cedar chest at the foot of the bed, untouched, like a grave inside the house. In August, the squirrels went mad. Eleanor noticed it first by the woodpile. They were frantic, tearing at pine cones, burying nuts in places they would never find them. Their cheeks bulged. Their eyes were wild. Old Pete the trapper came up the mountain in the second week of August to sell her some venison sheep. He stood at her gate and looked at the trees. Aspens are turning, he said. Month early. Eleanor looked. He was right. The very tops of the highest trees, the ones that caught the most wind, had already begun to gold. Means anything, she asked. Pete chewed his tobacco. He spat. He looked at her the way a man looks at someone who is about to hear bad news. Means a hard one coming, ma'am. Old folks haven't seen a sign like this since '64. That winter killed 30 in this gulch. I was a boy, but I remember. Eleanor put her hand on the gatepost. The wood was warm from the sun. How hard, she said. Pete did not answer right away. He looked at the cabin. He looked at her thin shoulders, at the smoke coming from her crooked little chimney. Ma'am, he said, I'd think about going down to the boarding house. If I were you, I'd think about it real soon. He tipped his hat. He walked away. Eleanor stood at the gate for a long time. The wind, even in August, had a sharp edge to it, a small, serrated promise. She felt it on her cheek, like a knife held very gently against the skin. Jacob Sterling came on a Tuesday. She had been expecting him. He did not knock. He stood at the bottom of the porch steps and waited, hat in hand, until she opened the door. As if knocking would have been a familiarity he did not want to claim. Mrs. Wade, Mr. Sterling. A word, if I may. She did not invite him in. He did not seem to expect it. He climbed the 3 steps slowly, testing each one with his weight, and Eleanor saw him register the give in the second board, the sponginess in the third. His eyes went up to the roofline, to the chinking, to the gap where the door frame had pulled away from the log wall. He saw her cabin the way a doctor sees a dying patient. She knew before he opened his mouth every word he was going to say. Mrs. Wade, he cleared his throat. I'll speak plain. This cabin is not going to make it through October, let alone January. The logs are green pine. The chinking is gone. The roof has a sag in it that means snow load is going to bring it down on you and the boy. I know, Eleanor said. It seemed to throw him off. He had come prepared to argue. You know. I know what the cabin is, Mr. Sterling. Then, he turned his hat in his hands. Then you know what has to happen. She waited. The mining concern will pay you fair for the timber rights. $300. Maybe $325 if I speak to them. That is enough for a year at the boarding house. The laundry is hiring. Mrs. Doyle has lost 2 girls to marriage this spring. She will take you on. There is a school for the boy. He said all of this the way a man reads a list at a hardware store. I have already buried a husband, Mr. Sterling. He blinked. Pardon? I said I have already buried a husband. I am not going to bury his land. Not yet. He looked at her. Really looked. Perhaps for the first time. And she watched his face do a thing she had seen on many men's faces in the last 4 months. A small, embarrassed thing where he realized she was a person and then quickly forgot because remembering was inconvenient. Mrs. Wade, with respect, sentiment is not shelter. No, she said, but neither is a laundry. A pause. I will think on it, Mr. Sterling. Thank you for coming up. He waited a moment longer, as if expecting her to change her mind right there on the porch. She did not. He put his hat on. He walked down the steps, more carefully on the second board this time. He stopped at the gate. Winter is not a thing you negotiate with, Mrs. Wade. I have seen what it does to a cabin like this. I have helped carry the bodies out. Do not make me carry yours. He left. Eleanor stood on the porch until he was out of sight. Her hands were shaking. She did not know yet whether it was fear or fury. She would learn that night that it was both. She wept for 2 days. She is not proud to say so. But she did. 2 days of grief and fear, and the slow, suffocating weight of every basket that had come up that mountain. Silas grew quiet. He stopped drawing. He sat on the floor by her chair and put his small hand on her knee and did not say anything, because there was nothing a 6-year-old could say. On the third day, she stopped. It was not a decision. It was more like a faucet running dry. She had used up all the tears in her body and there were none left. What was left was clear, cold, hard, clear. She would not be a ward of this town. She would not raise her son in the steam and lie of Mrs. Doyle's laundry. She would not sell Elias's land. She did not yet know what she would do, only what she would not. That night she put Silas to bed under 3 blankets. She lit the oil lamp. She walked to the cedar chest at the foot of the bed, and she opened it. His handwriting hit her like a slap. The slant of it, the way he wrote his lowercase e, the little hooks on his G's. She had to put her hand on the page and breathe for a minute before she could read. Then she read. The first 3 journals were geology, surveys, sample notes, pegmatite intrusion at the third bend, vein-bearing trace pyrite, no commercial value, the language of the man at his work. She did not understand half of it, and yet reading it, she could hear him, the cadence, the careful precision. She read for an hour without crying. That was a victory. The 4th journal was different, smaller, older. The leather cracked. When she opened it, the script was not Elias's at all. It was a copied hand. He had been transcribing something. Translating, she realized. The original entries were in Old German. He had written the English in the margins. Aus dem Tagebuch meiner Urgroßmutter, he had written on the inside cover. From the journal of my great-grandmother, Frida Wachter, stonemason's wife, Tyrol, Austria, 1812 to 1847. Eleanor turned the page, and the language changed. It was no longer the language of survey lines and sample weights. It was the language of stone. But not stone as a thing to be cut and hauled. Stone as something living, something that breathes slow. Eleanor leaned closer to the lamp. The young men build walls against the winter, Frida had written, in Elias's careful translation. They cut the trees. They saw the boards. They make a box. They stuff the box with rags. They fight the wind with thin wood and angry fires. The old men who have buried their fathers know better. The wise man invites the mountain into his home. Eleanor read the line 3 times. Then she kept reading. Frida wrote of Kasheloven, stone hearths the size of small rooms, built of brick and tile and clay. You burned a small hot fire in them once a day. The smoke did not rise straight up. It twisted through the body of the stove, through long passages of stone, giving up its heat as it went, until it crawled out the chimney barely warm. The stove drank the heat in. It held it. It gave it back, slow and steady, for a full day and a night. She wrote of houses dug into hillsides, of stables carved into the mountain itself, of a cousin's cottage in the high Alps, where a man could winter with a goat and a child and 4 cords of wood and come out in April, fat and laughing. The earth is not dead, my granddaughter, Frida wrote. The earth is a slow, warm animal, and her heart is a furnace. Lay your home against her ribs. She will keep you. Eleanor read until the lamp guttered. She sat in the dark for a long while after. She thought about Elias. She thought about why he had translated this book. He had never spoken of it. He had never said, Eleanor, my great-grandmother knew how to live in a mountain. He had simply translated it in his careful slanted hand in the long winter evenings when she had thought he was working on his survey notes. He had been preparing something, or saving something. For her? She did not know. Maybe he had been saving it for himself. Maybe he had not known why he was doing it at all. But it was here, in her hands, on the 3rd day after she had stopped crying. She closed the journal. She picked up another one, the last one, the newest. The leather was barely worn. She opened it. A single folded sheet of paper fell out. A map, drawn in Elias's hand. Their plot of land, the cabin, the creek, the stand of aspen, and on the far side of the property, marked with a small, careful X. Beside the X, in his neat printing, Prospect Tunnel, 60 feet, barren quartz vein, Geothermal anomaly. Investigate further. Eleanor stared at it. She remembered. She remembered now. He had mentioned it once, a month before he died. She had been canning beans. He had come in flushed and excited and washed his hands and said, Eleanor, the strangest thing. That old hole I dug last summer. I went back today. The rock at the back of it is warm. I mean, truly warm. In May. Underground. It makes no sense. She had nodded. She had been counting jars. She had said something like, "That's nice, dear." And he had laughed and kissed the top of her head and gone outside to chop wood. She had not thought of it again. Until now. Eleanor sat very still on the floor of her cabin. The lamp had gone out. The room was lit only by the moon coming through the one good window Elias had set with such care. In her hand was a map. In her chest, where the stone of pity had been for 4 months, something else, something small and burning. The shape of a question. What if? She did not sleep. She lay awake under the blankets next to Silas, listening to him breathe, and she thought about a hole in the side of a mountain, about warm rock in May, about a woman named Frida who had buried her father and learned to invite the mountain into her home. At the first gray light of dawn, she got up. She dressed. She left a note for Silas on the table. Mama's at the back of the property. Stay in the cabin. I will be back before noon. She took the lantern. She took matches. She took the map. She walked the half-mile to the back of the plot in a kind of fever. The grass was stiff with frost. Her breath came out in clouds. She found it where the map said it was. She had been past it 100 times and never looked. Elias's folly, the men in town called it. A scar in the mountainside. A failed dream. The mouth of the tunnel was choked with rockfall and brush. Thorny, dry vines had grown over it. She set down the lantern. She began to pull. Her hands were not made for this. She had a seamstress's hands. Within 10 minutes they were bleeding. She did not stop. She tore at the brush. She rolled rocks aside. She cleared a hole large enough for a woman to crawl through. She lit the lantern. She got down on her hands and knees. She crawled inside. The first thing was the silence. The wind, which had been steady all morning, vanished. She had not realized how loud the world was, above ground, until she went below it. The silence here was a thing with a shape. It pressed against her ears. The second thing was the air. It was cold, but not in the way the morning was cold. It was a different kind of cold. Still. Old. The cold of a cellar, not the cold of a wind. She crawled, 10 feet. The lantern light made the quartz in the walls glitter like little stars. 20 feet. The tunnel was narrow, just wide enough for a man with a wheelbarrow. She could touch both walls with her elbows. 30 feet. She paused. She put her hand to her cheek. Her cheek was cold. The air on her cheek was not cold, was not warm, but not cold. It was simply air. The air of a room. A still, quiet, indoor room, deep inside a mountain in October. She kept crawling. 40 feet, 50. At 60 feet, the tunnel ended. A solid wall of granite. Eleanor sat back on her heels. She lifted the lantern. She looked at the wall. Quartz veins ran through it like rivers of pale milk. Mica flecked the surface. Beautiful. Useless, Elias had written. Barren. She put her palm against the rock. She gasped. It was not warm the way a stove is warm. It was not warm the way sun-heated stone is warm. It was warm the way a sleeping animal is warm. Latent. Living. Patient. A heat that had been there 1,000 years before her hand touched it and would be there 1,000 years after. She kept her hand on the stone. She closed her eyes. She thought of Frida Wachter. She thought of Elias, bent over an old German journal in lamplight, translating a sentence by a dead woman from Tyrol. The wise man invites the mountain into his home. Eleanor opened her eyes. She crawled back out. The morning sun was blinding. She came out onto the cold grass covered in mud and rock dust. Her hands were raw. Her dress was ruined. The stone of pity in her chest was gone. In its place, something terrifying, something exhilarating, a plan. She told Silas at breakfast. She had thought about how to say it. She had thought about whether to say it at all to a 6-year-old. In the end, she just said it. Plain. Silas, I want to tell you something. He looked up from his oatmeal. We are going to live in the mountain. He chewed. He swallowed. Like a bear, he said. A little like a bear. He thought about this. Will Papa's pictures come too? Yes. All right, he said, and went back to his oatmeal. Eleanor put her hand over her mouth. She turned to the stove so he would not see her face. 6 years old. All right. As if she had told him they were having soup for supper. He had more faith in her than she had in herself. She decided right then she would have to grow into it. She started that day. She did not know everything she would need. She did not know enough. But she knew she had to begin because winter was coming and grief was a luxury she could no longer afford. She went to the tunnel. She measured 60 feet, long enough for a small home. The last 20 feet would be the living chamber. The middle 20 would be a passageway. The first 20 would be storage and a windbreak entry. She would need the floor cleared. She would need it leveled. She would need stone for the floor. She would need clay and sand and straw for bricks. She would need a kiln to fire them. She would need thousands of bricks by her rough count for the heater Frida had described. She did not have a kiln. She did not have a wheelbarrow. She did not have help. She had a shovel, a pickaxe, a map, and a journal written by a dead Austrian woman. She started with the shovel. The first day she shoveled rubble out of the tunnel until she could not lift her arms. She slept that night like a stone. She woke before dawn and did it again. The second day, Silas came out and watched her. He sat on a flat rock with his father's sketchbook and drew her working. The third day, he picked up a small stone and carried it to the spoil pile. She did not say anything. She did not want to make a thing of it. She just kept working. And when he came back for another, she was ready and held the wheelbarrow steady so he could put it in. By the end of the week, he was carrying stones all morning. By the end of the second week, his hands were as raw as hers. She thought about telling him to stop. She did not. He had lost his father. He needed to do something, anything. So they worked. The town began to notice. At first they thought she was shoring up the cabin, hauling stones to brace the foundation, a futile but understandable thing. The women's faces softened in the dry goods store. Poor thing, just trying. They sent a few more baskets, encouraging now, a jar of pickles, a small ham. Then she stopped working on the cabin entirely. Then she dug a shallow pit by the creek and started mixing clay and sand and straw. Then she built by hand a small, crude beehive kiln out of stone. Then she started firing bricks. Misshapen, lumpy, ugly bricks. But hard. She was not shoring up her cabin. She was building something else. The whispers started in late September. Eleanor heard them when she went to town for nails. Conversation stopped when she walked into the dry goods store. Mrs. Cobb's smile became too quick, too tight. Eleanor, dear, are you eating enough? I'm fine, Mrs. Cobb. And the boy? Silas is fine. It's just, people have been saying. Saying what, Mrs. Cobb? But Mrs. Cobb only shook her head and weighed out the nails. Eleanor walked home with the nails in a sack. She knew what they were saying. The widow had gone strange. The widow was digging a hole. The widow was going to bury herself and her boy in it. Pity, she realized, did not turn into respect when you refused to break. It turned into something else. It turned into a different word, said quieter. Madness. Cora Bishop came on the first cold morning of October. Eleanor was at the creek hauling flat stones. Silas was on the bank, sorting them by size. The frost had been thick that morning. The water in the shallows was edged with ice. Eleanor looked up, and there was an old woman on the path. She had not heard her come. Cora Bishop was small, bird-boned, maybe 70, maybe older. Her face was a map of weather, and her eyes were a startling pale blue. She wore a man's wool coat much too big for her and carried a walking stick of black wood. Eleanor knew who she was. Everyone knew who she was. Cora Bishop lived alone in a cabin 2 miles west of town, in the woods past the old church. The town did not say much about her, and what it did say was not kind. Witch. Heathen. That German woman. Mothers warned children away from her path. Children made signs against the evil eye when they saw her. Eleanor had passed her once at the dry goods store 3 years ago. They had not spoken. Now Cora Bishop stood on the path with both hands on her stick and looked at Eleanor and looked at the flat stones and looked at the half-built kiln up the slope. You are building a Kachelofen, she said. Her voice was quiet. The accent was old, careful. Bavaria, Eleanor would later learn. Not Austria, but close. Eleanor stood up slowly. Her back ached. Her arms were trembling. Yes, she said. With clay alone? Or with grog? Eleanor had no idea what grog was. She said so. Cora Bishop smiled. It changed her whole face. Child, she said, I have been waiting 40 years for someone in this town to ask me about a cachalofen. Your husband came to me last spring. He asked me many questions. I thought he would build one. Then he died. I thought the knowledge would die with me. She came down the path. She stopped a few feet from Eleanor. You are doing it wrong, she said, but you are doing it. May I help? Eleanor's eyes filled. She had not cried in 2 months. She did not know she still could. She nodded because her throat had closed. Cora Bishop put one small dry hand on Eleanor's wrist. Then we begin, she said. Tonight you come to my cabin. I have books. I have my husband's drawings. He was a stonemason from Munich. 40 years ago, we came to America with his drawings. The town did not want our kind of stove. They wanted iron. Iron is for fools. I will tell you this story another night. Tonight we draw plans. And child, she squeezed Eleanor's wrist. Stop carrying the stones alone. The boy is small, but he is willing. Use him. A child who works is a child who lives. She turned. She walked back up the path. She did not look back. Eleanor sat down on a flat rock. Silas came over. He put his small hand on her shoulder. Mama, he said, was that a witch? Eleanor laughed. She laughed until tears came. No, my love, she said. That was a teacher. Jacob Sterling came on a Tuesday in the 3rd week of October. Eleanor had been expecting him too. She had been expecting him for weeks. The whispers had been getting louder. She had seen the looks at the post office. She had heard Wesley Sterling, Jacob's tall, quiet son of 24, passing on the road and looking at her with something that was not contempt and not pity, but something like worry, which was new. Word had gotten back to Jacob Sterling that the Wade widow had not gone to town, that she was not chinking her cabin, that she was, in fact, doing something else, something with bricks, something with a hole. Sterling did not ride up. Sterling walked up, the way a man walks when he wants to make a point of how serious the matter is. His boots crunched on the gravel path Eleanor had laid. She heard him coming. She came out of the tunnel mouth, wiping clay from her hands on a rag. She was thin, wiry. Her face was smudged. Her hair was tied back with a strip of leather. Her dress was a work dress, mended, brown with dust. Her eyes were perfectly clear. Sterling stopped at the entrance. He looked at the cleared mouth of the tunnel. He looked at the wheelbarrow. He looked at the kiln. He looked at the stack of 3,000 misshapen homemade bricks under a tarp. He looked at Eleanor. Mrs. Wade, Mr. Sterling. What, he said, is the meaning of this excavation? I am making my winter quarters, Mr. Sterling. A pause. He took one step toward the tunnel mouth. He bent. He looked inside. His face did a thing. Eleanor watched it carefully. He was a man whose entire life had been spent looking at well-built things. Tongue-and-groove pine, square-cut beams, plumb lines, the clean, honest geometry of a frame house. What he was looking at now was none of those things. What he was looking at was a cave, a burrow, a hole. Mrs. Wade. His voice had lost its edge. It was softer now, almost gentle. The voice of a man speaking to someone who has lost their grip. This is not shelter. This is a damp tomb. By December, the moisture in here will be ice. Your boy will sicken. The cold will come up through the rock and kill you in your sleep. He pointed past her, into the gloom, at the half-built mass at the back. The first courses of brick were laid. The shape of the cachalofen was beginning to rise. To Sterling's eye, it must have looked like a child's mud pile. And that pile of mud. It will not draw. It will fill this cave with smoke, and you will suffocate. Mrs. Wade, I build houses. I know heat. I know shelter. I have been doing this for 30 years. This is a death trap of your own making. He took off his hat. He held it in both hands. I am asking you, I am begging you, come down, sell the timber, come to town. There is still time. Eleanor looked at him. For a moment she felt the old fear, the cold doubt. He was not a stupid man. He was an experienced man. He had built half of Silver Pine. Was she insane? Was she walking her son into a grave because she could not bear to lose her husband's land? She thought of Frida Wachter. She thought of Warm Rock at 60 feet in May. She thought of Cora Bishop's small hand on her wrist. She thought of Silas, 6 years old, sleeping last night with a smile on his face for the first time since April. She straightened her back. Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Wade. Your stoves shout, sir. Pardon me? Your iron stoves. They shout their heat into a room and the wind steals the words. My hearth will not shout. My hearth will tell a long, slow story to the stone, and the stone will remember. He stared at her. She could see him searching for the meaning of what she had just said, searching for a sane interpretation. Failing. Mrs. Wade, he said quietly. You are not well. I have never been better, Mr. Sterling. A long silence. He put his hat back on. He worked his jaw. I wash my hands of you, he said. When the snows come, do not send the boy down for help. Do not come knocking on doors. We warned you. The whole town warned you. Whatever happens here is on your head, not mine. Yes, Eleanor said. It is on my head. Good day, Mrs. Wade. Good day, Mr. Sterling. He turned. He walked back down the path. He did not look back. But Eleanor watched him go, and she saw the moment, 20 paces down, when his shoulders sagged. Just for a second. A tired man. A man who had come to save someone and had been refused. She almost called after him. She did not. She turned. She went back into the tunnel. She picked up a brick. She laid it on the wet mortar, where Cora Bishop had shown her, in the second course of the cockalofen. She pressed it down. Behind her, very far away, Silas was singing to himself. The aspens up the slope had all turned gold now. Every one of them. The first snow was 11 days away. The widow they pitied was no longer afraid. She was building. The first snow came on a Thursday. Not a real snow. A warning. A dry, hissing dust that fell for an hour before noon and was gone by supper. But it left a thin white skin on the high peaks, and the air after it. The air had changed. Eleanor stood at the mouth of the tunnel with a hand to her cheek. She had felt this air before. Once, in her childhood, the winter her aunt had died. It was the air that came before the air that killed. She turned and went back into the tunnel. There was work to do. Cora Bishop arrived at first light every morning. She came up the path with her black walking stick and a leather satchel slung over one shoulder. Inside the satchel were her dead husband's drawings, 40 years old, drawn in pencil on linen paper. The folds were so worn they had become soft as cloth. She would unroll them on a flat stone outside the tunnel. She would weight the corners with pebbles. She would point. This, she would say, this is the throat. This is where the hot gas turns. If you lay the bricks like so. The fire breathes. Eleanor would nod. Her hands were always shaking by then. From cold, from work, from caffeine. She drank chicory in the morning because she could not afford coffee. And if I lay them like this? Eleanor asked once. Pointing, Cora looked at her. Then you die, Cora said, pleasantly. Ah, like so, like so. Yes, they worked. Silas worked too. He worked like a small, grim man. He carried small, grim stones. He sorted them by size and color the way his father had sorted rock samples. He wore Elias's old leather work gloves, which came up past his elbows. He looked ridiculous. He looked beautiful. He did not speak much, but he was no longer silent. He had begun to hum. Eleanor noticed it on the third day with Cora, a small, tuneless humming while he sorted stones. She did not know what the song was. He may not have known either, but it came out of him like steam from a kettle. Steady, continuous, alive. She did not point it out. She did not say, Silas, you are humming again. She just listened. She thought he is finding his way back. She thought we are finding our way back. The first Kashelofen failed. She knew the moment she lit it. It was a small one, a practice one. Cora had insisted, you do not build a real one until you have built a wrong one, she had said. Build wrong first. Learn what wrong feels like. Then build right. So Eleanor built wrong. She built it 10 feet inside the tunnel, a short, ugly thing, a trial run. She fed it kindling, aspen shavings, a handful of pine. She struck the match. The fire caught. For one beautiful second, the small flames climbed. And then, smoke, a thick gray rope of it, backwards, out of the firebox, into the tunnel, into Eleanor's face. Silas screamed. Eleanor grabbed him, threw a wet rag over his face, hauled him out into the cold morning. They stood on the path coughing, their eyes streaming. Silas was crying, not loud, quiet, the way he had cried at the funeral. Mama, Mama, did we die? No, sweetheart, no. We are fine. We are fine. Cora came up the path. She had heard the coughing. She looked at the smoke pouring from the tunnel mouth. She did not laugh. She did not say, "I told you so." She did not say anything at all for a long moment. She put her hand on Silas's shoulder. "Brave boy," she said. "Now you have met the smoke. The smoke is honest. The smoke says what is wrong. Listen, child. What did the smoke say?" Silas wiped his eyes. "It came backwards," he said. "Yes. Why?" He thought about it. 6 years old. A thinking face. The hole was too small?" Cora smiled. "The hole was too small." "Yes. The fire wanted more air than you gave it. The fire is greedy. Remember this." She turned to Eleanor. "Now we tear it down, and we build it again. And this time you do not put your son inside until I have lit the fire myself." Eleanor sat down on a rock. She put her face in her hands. Cora said nothing. She let her have it. "I almost killed him," Eleanor whispered. "No. Cora, the smoke. He was choking." "Eleanor, I cannot do this. I cannot." "Eleanor Wade." Cora's voice was sharp. "Look at me." Eleanor looked. Every Kachelofen builder in Bavaria, every one, built a wrong stove first. My husband, his father, his father's father. They all coughed black smoke. They all sat with their face in their hands. They all said, "I cannot." And then they got up, and they tore down the wrong stove, and they built the right one. This is the work, child. This is the only way the work is done. Eleanor breathed. She breathed. She wiped her face on her dirty sleeve. "All right," she said. "Yes? All right. Then up, up, tear it down. We have light until 5. Eleanor stood. Silas was watching her. She held out her hand. He took it. "Help me, baby," she said. "Help me tear down the wrong one." He nodded, solemn, 6 years old. They went back into the tunnel together. She rebuilt the small stove. This time it drew. She watched the smoke crawl up through the brick passages, watched the heat begin to register in her hand, a foot away from the body of the stove. A clean, slow heat. Not the angry roar of an iron stove. A patient, even warmth. She started to cry. She did not let Cora see. The vandalism started in the second week of November. She came out one morning to find half her brick pile crushed. 200 bricks. Smashed. Stomped. The clay broken where it had not yet fully cured. Eleanor stood in the cold and counted them. 2 weeks of work. Gone. Silas was beside her. He was holding her hand. He was very still. "Bad people, Mama?" "Yes, baby. Bad people." "Will they come back?" Eleanor knelt. She pulled him into her chest. "If they do, my love, we will be ready." But she did not feel ready. She felt afraid. She felt a different kind of afraid. Not afraid of cold, afraid of people. Afraid of the slow malice of men who did not even know her, who came at night, who chose to break what she had built rather than build their own. That was a worse cold than the wind. She found him on the second night. She had not slept. She had wrapped herself in a blanket and sat at the edge of the kiln yard with Elias's old hunting rifle across her lap. Unloaded. She did not have the heart to load it. She just wanted the shape of it, the weight. The moon was high, cold, bright. A figure came up the path at maybe 1 in the morning. A tall figure, carrying a sledgehammer. Eleanor stood. "That's far enough." The figure froze. "Mrs. Wade, drop the hammer." He dropped it. "Step into the moonlight." He stepped. It was Wesley Sterling. He was 24 years old, 6'3", built like his father but quieter, watchful, with his mother's sad gray eyes. He stood in the moonlight with his shoulders slumped and his hands at his sides, and his face was the face of a boy who had been caught. Eleanor stared at him. She had not loaded the rifle. She wished she had. Wesley, Mrs. Wade. Your father sent you. A long pause. Yes, ma'am. To smash my bricks. Yes, ma'am. The first time too? Yes, ma'am. Eleanor sat down on a stone. She set the rifle across her knees. She looked at this big, sad young man in the moonlight, and she felt something she did not expect. She felt sorry for him. Wesley. Ma'am, why did you come back tonight? He did not answer. Wesley. To stop, ma'am. Stop what? Stop doing it. I came to put the hammer in your woodpile, so I could tell my father I'd done it, so you'd find it, whole, untouched, so you'd know. Eleanor stared at him. Know what? That's somebody. That somebody was on your side, ma'am. The wind moved in the aspens. A coyote called, very far away. Eleanor felt a stone in her chest break. Not the stone of pity, that one was long gone. A different stone, a stone she had not known was there. The stone of believing herself completely alone. It cracked, a small sound in her chest. Come here, Wesley. He came. She stood up. She handed him the rifle. He took it without thinking, the way a young man trained around guns takes a gun. He looked down at it stupidly. It isn't loaded, she said. Oh, I never could shoot anyway. Ma'am, she looked at him. Why is your father afraid of me, Wesley? He did not answer right away. He thought about it. When he spoke, his voice was very low. Because if you live, ma'am, then everything he ever taught about how to build a house is wrong, Eleanor breathed out. Yes, she said. I think you have it exactly right. He shifted his weight. Mrs. Wade. Yes, I have a sack of nails. Iron nails. Good ones. From the mill. Cut nails. The kind you can't buy out here. I can. I can leave them in your kiln yard. Tomorrow night. Eleanor laughed. She didn't mean to. It came out anyway. A small, shocked laugh. Wesley Sterling. Ma'am, if your father catches you helping me, what will he do? A long pause. Throw me out. And where will you go? Don't know, ma'am. She looked at him. Bring the nails. Yes, ma'am. And Wesley. Ma'am, if he asks if you smashed my bricks, tell him yes. Ma'am, tell him yes. Tell him you smashed everyone. Tell him you broke my heart while you did it. Tell him I cried. Make it good. Make him believe it. A slow, tired smile spread across the boy's face. Yes, ma'am. He turned to go. Wesley. He looked back. Thank you, she said. He nodded once, quick, like it embarrassed him. He walked off into the dark. Eleanor sat back down on the cold stone. She held the unloaded rifle. She thought about how grief makes you believe you are alone, and how grief is a liar. The bricks she had to remake. There was no help for it. Cora and Eleanor and Silas spent 4 days remixing clay, 4 days refiring, 4 days losing 4 days. They were behind schedule. Cora did not say so, but Eleanor saw her looking up at the sky in the afternoons, looking at the way the light fell, looking at the depth of the gold on the aspens. The mountain was telling Cora something. Cora was not telling Eleanor what it said. Silas got sick on the night of the first real snow. It came down at supper, big, slow flakes, the kind that mean business. Eleanor had finished the floor in the inner chamber that afternoon. They were almost moved in. They were eating their last meal in the cabin by the failing iron stove. Silas pushed his food away. Not hungry, baby. Mama, I'm hot. She put her hand on his forehead. She went very still. The forehead was on fire. Oh, she said, quietly. Mama? I'm here, baby. I'm right here. By midnight, he was burning. By 2 a.m., he was talking to people who were not in the room. He was talking to Elias. He was talking to a horse Eleanor did not know about. He was crying for a blanket that he was already lying under. Eleanor stripped him down. She bathed his head with cold water from the bucket. She watched his small chest rise and fall too fast. She thought, I have killed him, she thought. I have killed him with my pride. She thought Sterling was right. She put on her coat. She put on her boots. She wrapped Silas in 3 blankets. She picked him up. He weighed nothing. He weighed everything. She stepped onto the porch. The snow was already knee-deep on the path. The town was 3 miles down. A doctor was 4. The wind was high. Silas was in her arms. She took 1 step. A voice behind her. Eleanor. She turned. Cora was at the cabin door. She had walked up in the snow. She was carrying her satchel. Her face in the lamplight was old and hard and certain. Where are you going, child? Town? Doctor? No. Cora. He has a fever. He is. Cora, he is dying. Cora. He is not dying. I have to. Eleanor Wade. Cora's voice was iron. If you walk into that town tonight with a sick child in your arms, they will not give you a doctor. They will give you a verdict. They will say you are an unfit mother. They will say the boy is sick because of where you have made him sleep. Sterling will see to it. The women will see to it. They will take the boy from you. No. Yes. You know it is yes. Look at me. You know. Eleanor stood in the snow holding her burning child. She knew. Her knees gave a little. Cora climbed the steps. She put her dry hands on Eleanor's shoulders. I have herbs, she said. I have done this before. Many times. With my own. With others. Bring him in. Bring him in to the warm. Cora, bring him in. Eleanor brought him in. The fever broke at 4 in the morning. Cora had brewed something black and bitter. Yarrow. Willow bark. A pinch of something Eleanor did not recognize. They got it into him a teaspoon at a time. They sponged him down. They sang to him. Cora sang in German. Eleanor in English. Silas did not know either song. He drifted between them like a small boat between 2 shores. At 4, his temperature dropped. His eyes opened. They were clear. He looked at his mother. Mama, he said, did we eat supper? Eleanor laughed. She could not stop laughing. She laughed until she was crying. She laughed into his hair. She held him so tightly Cora had to pry her hands loose. He needs to breathe, child, Cora said, gently. Eleanor let go. She watched him drift back to sleep. A real sleep this time. The good kind. The healing kind. She turned to Cora. She tried to say thank you. She could not get the words out. Cora waved her hand. No, Cora said. No thanks. Not for this. This is a debt I have been waiting 40 years to pay. Eleanor did not understand. Not yet. She would soon. 3 nights later, Silas was well enough to sleep through the night. They had moved into the inner chamber by then. The big cachalofen was finished. It had been firing for a week. The stone walls of the chamber had begun to warm. It was not yet truly comfortable. The bricks had not yet charged, as Cora put it. They held only a fraction of the heat they would hold by January. But it was warm. Warmer than the cabin had ever been. Silas slept on a small straw mattress against the warm wall. Eleanor sat by the lamp. She had not opened the last journal. The 4th one. Elias's last one. The one with the map. She had read the front of it. The geological notes. She had skipped the back. The back had been blank when she had glanced at it that first night. Or so she had thought. Tonight she did not know why. She opened it again. She turned to the back. She found something there. A folded piece of paper, tucked between the last 2 pages, sealed with a drop of red wax that had cracked. Her name on the front. Eleanor. His handwriting. She held it for a long time before she opened it. Then she opened it. Eleanor, I am writing this on a Tuesday in March. I do not know why I am writing it. I have a feeling. Men with my work get feelings. Most of the feelings are nothing. Sometimes a feeling is a thing. I have been surveying the high cut for the railroad. There is a man there I do not trust. I will not write his name. But I have a feeling, and I am writing this in case the feeling is a thing. If you are reading this, I am gone. I am sorry. I am so sorry, my brave girl. I had 100 more things I wanted to say to you. I will say one. Open the chest, the 4th journal. There is a map. The tunnel at the back of our property is not a folly. It is a gift. There is a place 60 feet in where the stone is warm. I do not understand why yet. I will. I think I will. If something happens to me. Read my great-grandmother's journal. Frida Wachter. I have translated it. She knew how to live in the bones of a mountain. Her people did. Mine do. Yours will. Eleanor, you are stronger than you know. When I am not there to tell you, you will not believe it. So believe me now. Believe me on this paper. You are stronger than you know. You have always been. You think it is me. It is not me. It is you. Invite the mountain into our home, my love. Build the fire small. Build the stone large. Hold our boy. I will see you in the warm rock. Elias. Eleanor sat with the letter in her lap. The lamp guttered. She did not move. She thought of him writing it. She tried to picture it. He must have been at his desk in the cabin, the one she had thrown out a month ago because the legs were rotted. He must have been at it in the evening, while she canned tomatoes or mended a sock. He must have folded it, sealed it, slipped it into the back of a journal, hoping she would never need to read it. He had had a feeling. The feeling had been a thing. She thought he knew. She thought he knew something would happen, and he did not tell me, and he prepared for it. She did not know whether to be angry. She thought she should be angry. She found that she was not. She found that she was, for the first time in 8 months, not angry, not afraid, not lost. She was known. He had known her. He had known her better than she had known herself. He had written her a letter from the dead, and the letter said, "You are stronger than you know." She held the paper to her chest. She wept, quietly, so as not to wake Silas. Outside the chamber, beyond 60 feet of granite, the wind was rising. Inside, the stone was warm. The next morning she went to find Cora. She had to know. She walked the 2 miles in fresh snow. Her breath made clouds. The sky was a cold blue. She knocked on Cora's cabin door. "Come." Eleanor pushed it open. Cora's cabin was small and tidy and smelled of dried herbs. A small cachalofen, a fraction of the size of Eleanor's, stood against one wall, radiating gentle heat. Cora was at the table cutting onions. Eleanor stood in the doorway. She had not planned what she was going to say. "Cora," she said, "3 nights ago, you said you had been waiting 40 years to pay a debt." Cora did not look up. She kept cutting onions. "Yes," she said. "I said that. Tell me." A long silence. Cora set the knife down. She wiped her hands on her apron. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit, child." Eleanor sat. Cora poured chicory from a tin pot. She pushed a cup across. She looked at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was very quiet. "My husband was Klaus Bishop. Klaus Bischoff before America made it Bishop. He was a stonemason from Munich. We came in 1844. We had 2 children, a girl, Anna, 6, a boy, Heinrich, 3. Klaus wanted to build a Kasselofen. He had drawings. He had been an apprentice in Munich. He knew how. The town, Silver Pine, was new then, just a year old. The town was full of men from the East, iron men, catalog men. They laughed at Klaus. They said his stove was a peasant thing, a pile of mud. They said no decent American would live with such a stove in his parlor. Klaus. She paused. Klaus was a proud man, a young man. He did not want to be laughed at in the town where he had brought his family. So he listened to them. He bought an iron stove. He built our cabin, like the others. The winter of 1844 was a hard winter. Not as hard as some. Hard enough. Anna died in January. Lung sickness. The cabin could not hold its heat. The stove ate wood and gave nothing back. By morning the room was cold, and the fire was dead, and the iron was a black, useless lump. Heinrich. Heinrich died 2 weeks later. Eleanor put her hand to her mouth. Cora did not look up from her cup. Klaus died the next spring. Of nothing. Of grief. He sat down in a chair one afternoon and did not get up. The doctor said his heart. I knew it was not his heart. His heart had died in January. I have lived alone in this cabin for 40 years. I built my Kasselofen myself, from his drawings, the first winter without him. I sat in front of it and I cried because it was warm, and my children were not there to feel it. I have sat with this story for 40 years. I have not told anyone. There was no one to tell. She looked up. Her pale blue eyes were wet but steady. Then last spring, a young man came up my path with his great-grandmother's German journal. He could read it. He asked me about Kasselofen. He took notes. He listened. He listened the way Klaus used to listen. I thought, maybe the knowledge will not die with me. Then he died, I thought. It will die with me. Then his widow began to dig. She reached across the table. She took Eleanor's hand. Eleanor, do you understand? When you came down that path with clay on your hands, I was not helping a stranger. I was finishing a sentence I started 40 years ago. I was burying my children properly this time. Not in the cold, in the warm. Do you understand? Eleanor was crying. She was nodding and crying. Yes, she said. Yes, Cora. Yes. Cora squeezed her hand. So, you see, it is not me helping you. It is us. Helping each other. Helping them. She let go. She picked up the knife. She started cutting onions again. Eat, she said. I make a stew. Then we go back to your tunnel. The chimney throat needs another course of brick. You laid it crooked yesterday. Eleanor laughed through her tears. Yes, ma'am. Drink the chicory first. It is good for sorrow. Yes, ma'am. She drank. It was good for sorrow. Word spread in town that Eleanor had been seen at Cora Bishop's cabin. The whispers grew teeth. Witchcraft, somebody said at the dry goods store, loud enough for Mrs. Cobb to repeat it. That German woman has gotten to her, said somebody else. Sterling spoke at a town meeting. He did not name Eleanor. He did not need to. He spoke about certain residents of the Gulch who were putting children at risk. He spoke about primitive practices. He spoke about the responsibility of a Christian community to act. The community shifted in their seats. Some agreed, some did not. Hattie Holloway came on a Wednesday. She was the wife of Reverend Whitfield, a small woman, 61, iron gray hair, the kind of woman who had buried her own opinions for 30 years to keep the peace in a parsonage. She came up the path on foot. She was carrying a bundle. Eleanor saw her from the kiln yard. Eleanor's hands were full of clay. Mrs. Holloway. Eleanor. She used the first name. The first time anyone in town had used it, instead of Mrs. Wade, since the funeral. Eleanor put down her clay. Hattie set the bundle on a flat stone. A goose-down quilt, she said. I made it myself. 20 years ago, before the rheumatism. It is the warmest thing I own. I do not need it. I have my husband. I want the boy to have it. Mrs. Holloway, I cannot. 3 jars of honey, Hattie went on, ignoring her. From my own bees. The dark kind. The kind that helps a cough. I put them at the bottom of the bundle so they would not roll out. Hattie, people will see. People will talk. Let them. Eleanor blinked. Pardon? Hattie Holloway looked her in the eye. Eleanor Wade. I have been the wife of a minister for 31 years. I have heard a great many sermons about widows. I have heard a great many sermons about being a good neighbor. I have not, in 31 years, seen this town be a good neighbor to a widow. I have brought you a quilt. I will bring more. If they want to talk, they can talk. I am 61 years old. My talking days are not done either. Eleanor stared at her. She stepped forward. She hugged this small old woman she barely knew. Hattie hugged back. Hard. She smelled of pressed lavender and old Bibles. Bless you, child, she whispered. Bless you for choosing to live. Eleanor could not speak. Hattie patted her back. Once, twice. She let go. I must get back. He will wonder. I will come Thursday. I will bring eggs. The boy needs eggs. She turned and went down the path. Eleanor stood holding a quilt. She thought, Cora, Wesley, Hattie. She thought 3. 3 is not nothing. 3 is not alone. She thought, maybe this is how it works. Maybe alone is a lie a town tells you. Maybe alone is never the truth. She carried the quilt inside. She put it on Silas's bed. December came. Cora began to climb the high knoll behind Eleanor's plot at dawn each morning. She would stand there for 10 minutes, looking north. Eleanor watched her from the kiln yard. On the first morning of December, Cora came down the knoll slowly. Her face was white. Eleanor stopped working. Cora. Eleanor. What is it? Cora set down her stick. She sat on the flat stone where Hattie had left the quilt. She was breathing hard. Eleanor, there is a sky coming I have seen one time. In my life. One time, I was a young woman. The sky was the color of a bruise. The wind dropped. The birds went. A small place I do not name. A small place up valley from where I was. Did not survive. She looked at Eleanor. That sky is coming. Maybe a week, maybe two. The mountain is telling me. I do not know how the mountain tells me. The mountain tells me. Eleanor sat down beside her. The two women sat on a flat stone in December sun. Cora, yes. Are we ready? The chamber's warm. The stove is charging. The flue draws. The food is laid in. The water is in jars. The boy as well. You are stronger than you were. That is not what I asked. A long pause. No, Cora said. No, child. We are not ready. There is no being ready for what is coming. There is only being inside the mountain when it comes. She looked at the door of the tunnel. Get inside the mountain, Eleanor. Stay inside. Whatever comes to your door, whoever knocks, open the door. The mountain is big enough. Cora, Eleanor, will you come down? To us. When it starts, will you come down? Cora smiled. Eleanor did not like the smile. I have lived alone for 40 years, child. I have a cockalophon in my own little house. I have my husband's bones in my own little ground. I will be at my hearth. Cora, hush. We will see each other in the spring. Cora, please. Eleanor. Cora put her dry hand on Eleanor's cheek. I have given you what I have. The rest is yours to do. The work is yours to finish. There are people in this town who will need a warm room. You will know them when you see them. You will open the door. Yes? Eleanor stared at her. The wind moved in the aspens. The aspens had no leaves anymore. The wind moved through the bare branches and made a sound like a long breath. Yes, Eleanor said. Her voice was steady. She did not feel steady. Her voice was steady anyway. Good. Cora stood up. She picked up her stick. She went back down the path, slowly between the aspens, toward her own small cabin 2 miles away. Eleanor watched her go. She did not know it was the last time, before everything changed, that she would see Cora Bishop walk that path with a stick in her hand and a satchel on her shoulder. She knew something, though. Some part of her knew. She stood at the kiln yard for a long time after Cora was out of sight. Then she went inside the tunnel. She tended the fire in the great cockalophon. She fed it 3 pieces of seasoned aspen. She watched the flames take. She put her hand against the stone. The stone was warm. The stone was patient. The stone had been waiting 1,000 years. The stone could wait a little longer. The bruised sky came 8 days later. It came on a Tuesday afternoon. Eleanor was outside splitting one last barrow of kindling. Silas was inside the chamber, sleeping under Hattie Holloway's quilt. She straightened up. She put a hand to her back. She looked north. The sky over the high peaks was not blue, was not gray, was not white. The sky was the color of a bruise 3 days old. Yellow at the edges, purple in the middle. Sick. The wind dropped, all at once, like a switch. A jay that had been screeching in the aspen behind her went silent mid-cry. Eleanor stood very still. She felt a small hand on the back of her neck. Cold. She turned. There was no one there, just the bruised sky, and the silence, and the smell of the air, which had become a smell she did not have a name for. The smell of something old, the smell of something coming. She dropped the axe. She walked very fast to the cabin. She gathered the last few things she had left up there. A box of matches, the rifle, a small tin of black tea Hattie had brought on Sunday. She went into the tunnel. She pulled the heavy oak door Wesley had hung for her last week. She set the wedge in the bottom. She walked the 60 feet inside. She came into the inner chamber. Silas was awake. He was sitting up under the quilt. His hair was rumpled. His eyes were big. Mama? Yes, baby. The wind stopped. Yes. Is it coming? She knelt beside his mattress. She smoothed his hair. She looked at his face. She thought, I will not lie to him. Yes, she said. It is coming. Tonight, maybe tomorrow morning. A big storm. A bigger storm than anyone in this town has ever seen. He nodded. Are we safe, Mama? She thought about it. Not for long. The truth was simpler than she had expected. Yes, she said. We are safe. The mountain is going to keep us, Mama promises. And other people? She looked at him. 6 years old. And other people, she said. If they come, we will keep them too. He thought about this. Like a bear? He said. Like a bear. He nodded. He lay back down. He closed his eyes. Eleanor stood up. She walked across the warm stone floor. She put one more piece of seasoned aspen in the firebox of the cachalofen. She watched the small, hot fire take. She watched the smoke begin its long, slow journey through the body of the stove, through the 7 turns, through the brick passages Cora had taught her to lay, into the fissure, up the mountain, out somewhere on the surface, far above her, where the wind was about to begin to scream. She put her hand on the stone. The stone was warm. She closed her eyes. She thought of Elias. Believe me on this paper. You are stronger than you know. She thought of Frida. The wise man invites the mountain into his home. She thought of Cora. Whoever knocks, open the door. She opened her eyes. She was Eleanor Wade. She was 27 years old. She was a widow. She was a mother. She was a builder. She was ready. Outside, very far above them, the first flakes began to fall. The great storm of 1886 had come. The storm came in sideways, not down, sideways. By midnight on Tuesday, the wind had risen from nothing to a scream. Not the moan a wind makes through trees, a scream. The kind of sound a thing makes when it has decided to take everything. The flakes were not flakes. They were small, hard pellets. They did not float. They flew. They hit the side of Eleanor's collapsing cabin like buckshot. The cabin would not survive the night. Eleanor knew it. She did not care. She was 60 feet inside the mountain. The wind could not find her there. It hunted for her. It rounded the shoulder of the slope. It tore at the door of the tunnel. It got a corner under the heavy oak and pulled and pulled and pulled. The door held. Wesley Sterling had hung it well. Eleanor stood at the inner end of the tunnel, in the warm chamber, listening. She could hear the wind only as a vibration in the rock, a low, distant animal sound. The way you hear a wolf you do not see. She had stoked the cachalofen at dusk, a small, hot fire, 6 pieces of split aspen. The fire had burned out 2 hours ago. She had not added more. She did not need to. The body of the stove was warm. The stone walls were warm. The floor was warm. The chamber was holding 62 degrees and would hold it through the night without another stick. This is what stone did. This is what Frida Wachter had known. You did not feed a cachalofen the way you fed an iron stove. You charged it once in the morning. Then you let it pay you back all day. Silas slept. His breath was steady, his cheek pink, his hand half curled around the corner of Hattie Holloway's quilt. Eleanor watched him in the lamplight. She thought, he is the warmest he has ever been in his life. She thought, he has no idea. She thought, good. That is the point. That is exactly the point. She took off her boots. She climbed onto her own straw mattress. She lay on her back. She listened to the mountain hum. She slept. She slept for 6 hours. She had not slept 6 hours in a row since April. In town 3 miles below, the storm did its work. It found the Sterling house first. The Sterling house was the finest house in Silver Pine. 2 stories, 6 rooms, tongue and groove pine, a black iron stove in the parlor that had been freighted up from Denver in 1881. A second iron stove in the kitchen, glass windows in every room, a real plastered ceiling. By 2 a.m. on Wednesday, the parlor stove was glowing cherry red. By 3, the parlor was 40 degrees. Jacob Sterling did not understand it. He stood in front of the stove with his palms held out. The iron face of the stove was so hot it would have raised a blister on his hand. He could see the heat coming off it, a wavering, shimmering wall of heat. And yet the room was 40 degrees. His wife, Adelaide, was on the settee under 3 coats. His 2 daughters, May and Ruth Ann, were under blankets on the floor in front of the stove. 6 and 8 years old, their cheeks too red, their breathing too fast. The windows were sheets of opaque ice, frozen from the inside. Adelaide did not say anything. She had stopped saying anything an hour ago. She was watching her husband. She was watching the way a wife watches a man who has made a decision that has put her children in danger. She was not yet angry. She was about to be. Jacob, she said. Yes, the girls are too cold. I know. Their lips. Look at their lips. I know, Adelaide. I am feeding the stove. The stove is not enough. The stove is the best stove in this town. Then the best stove in this town is not enough. He looked at her. She looked at him. A moment passed. The kind of moment in a marriage you do not come back from. Both of them knew it. Both of them watched it pass and did not try to stop it. He turned back to the stove. He fed it the last of the dry oak. He thought in a dark corner of his mind he did not let himself look at, of the Wade widow. He pushed the thought away. The thought came back. By dawn, the dry oak was gone. He started on the green pine. Green pine is what a man burns when he has nothing else and is willing to fill his house with wet smoke and creosote to do it. Sterling started on the green pine at 6 a.m. on Wednesday. The fire hissed. The fire spat. The fire smoked. The room got smokier. The room did not get warmer. By 8 in the morning, his daughter May had begun to shiver in a way Sterling did not like. Shivering is good. Shivering means the body is fighting. Shivering means the body has not yet given up. Then the shivering stopped. May lay very still under her blanket. Sterling stared at her. His wife stared at him. "Jacob," Adelaide said. Her voice was quiet. Her voice had the shape of a knife. "Jacob." She was right, wasn't she? He did not answer. "Jacob." "Adelaide." "Don't." The widow Wade. She was right. She is dead. Then we will be dead too. By morning, won't we? He did not answer. He could not, because the answer was yes. The storm broke briefly at noon. Just a window. Maybe an hour. The wind dropped to a moan. The snow thinned to a steady fall. Sterling put on his heaviest coat. "Where are you going?" Adelaide said. "For help." "There is no help. The town is the same as us. I am going for help." "Jacob." He turned. "Jacob." The truth. He looked at her. He could not lie to her. Not anymore. "I am going up the mountain." "Why?" "Because if she is alive, I have to know." "Why?" "Because I sent her there." A long pause. Adelaide stood up. She crossed the room. She put both hands on his face. Her hands were ice cold. "Bring her down," she said. "If she lives, bring her down. Bring her family. Bring her witch friend. Bring whoever she has. I do not care anymore who is right. I care who is warm." "Adelaide." "Jacob." "Yes, if you find them dead, you do not come back here. Do you understand me? You do not come back to this house and tell me you found them dead. You stay up there. You sit with them. You do not come back." He stared at her. She meant it. She meant every word. He thought, I have not known this woman. Not really. Not until today. He thought, I am going to lose her. Even if I live. Even if my daughters live. I am going to lose her unless I do this exactly right. He nodded. He went out into the storm. The climb was the worst hour of his life. 3 miles. Up. Through snow that came to his hips in some places and his chest in others. The wind started up again 20 minutes into the climb. The window had closed. The storm had decided he was not getting out. His face froze in patches. His left cheek, his chin, the thin skin around his eyes. His lungs felt like they were made of broken glass. He fell 3 times. Each time he got up. Each time he thought about not getting up. He thought, I deserve to die out here. He thought, I deserve to die out here for what I said to her. He thought, I sent a widow and her child to a hole in the ground in October, and I told her not to ask for help. He kept walking. He kept walking because his daughter May had stopped shivering. He kept walking because his wife had told him not to come back without them. He kept walking because 40 years of building good square houses with good iron stoves had not been enough to keep his own children warm. And somewhere on that climb, somewhere between the second fall and the third, something inside him broke. Not his body. His body would heal. Something else. The thing that had stood at the bottom of the porch steps and refused to come inside 8 months ago. The thing that had said sentiment is not shelter. The thing that had pointed at her stove and said that pile of mud will never draw. That thing died on the slope. Jacob Sterling kept walking. He was not anymore the man he had been at sunrise. He came over the last rise and saw her cabin. The cabin was gone. Half collapsed. Snow up to the eaves on one side. The door buried. The chimney leaning. No smoke. No light. Nothing. He went to his knees in the snow. He thought, I am too late. He thought, they are in there. Frozen. The boy is in there frozen. He bent his head. He started to cry. He had not cried since his own father died in 1872. The tears froze on his face. He stayed on his knees a long time. He did not know how long. He thought he might just stay there. He thought he might just close his eyes. He thought he had earned it. Then he saw it. Through the haze of blowing snow, past the dead cabin, out on the far slope. A shimmer, not smoke, a shimmer in the air. The way air looks above a hot road in summer. A small distortion, a breathing in the cold. It was rising from the ground, from the mouth of Elias Wade's old prospect tunnel. Sterling stared at it. His mind would not accept it. It was impossible. It was a trick of his eyes. He was hallucinating. He was dying. He stood up. He walked toward it. He fell. He stood up. He kept walking. The brush at the mouth of the tunnel had been cleared. He could see it. Some of it was buried under fresh snow, but he could see where a path had been, where someone had been going in and out of that hole every day. He reached the entrance. He felt it. A breath. A slow, impossible exhalation of warmth coming from the dark hole in the rock. He fell to his knees again. He pulled himself in. 10 feet in, the wind was gone. 20 feet in, his face began to thaw. He felt it as pain. The frozen patches on his cheek and chin started to burn. He kept crawling. 30 feet in, the air was no longer cold. 40 feet. 50. He could see light ahead. A soft, steady, golden light. Not firelight. Lamplight. He rounded a slight bend in the tunnel, and he stopped. He stopped on his hands and knees, and he stopped. Because what he saw made no sense. What he saw was a room, a small chamber, maybe 12 feet across. The walls were rough granite. The floor was flat stone. Against the far wall, a great squat brick beast of a stove, dark and silent, radiating heat he could feel from 20 feet away. A small wooden table, 2 chairs, 2 straw mattresses against the warm wall, a box of children's wooden animals, a line strung from one wall to the other, with 2 small shirts and a pair of stockings drying on it, and at the table, in a clean blue dress, Eleanor Wade. She was mending a tear in her son's shirt. The boy was on the floor by the stove. He was on his stomach. He was drawing on a flat slate with a piece of charcoal. He was wearing a wool shirt. His feet were bare. The bottoms of his small bare feet were pink from the warm floor. The whole chamber smelled of bread and of a stew bubbling in an iron pot on a small grate set into the side of the stove. Sterling could not move. He stayed on his hands and knees in the entrance to the chamber. His mouth was open. He could not get any sound out. The boy looked up, saw him, did not scream, did not even seem surprised, just looked at him with calm dark eyes and said, "Mama, there is a man." Eleanor turned. She set down her sewing. She looked at Jacob Sterling on his hands and knees in the doorway of her home. She did not say, "I told you so." She did not say anything for a long moment. Then she stood up. She walked across the warm stone floor in her stocking feet. She knelt down in front of him. She looked at his frozen, weeping face. She said, "Mr. Sterling." He could not answer. She put one hand on his shoulder. "You are cold," she said. "Come in." He could not speak for nearly an hour. She did not push him. She helped him out of his frozen coat. She took off his boots. She rubbed his hands between her own. She put a wool blanket around his shoulders. She sat him at the table. She set a bowl of stew in front of him. She had to feed him the first 3 spoonfuls. His hands shook too hard. The boy watched all of this from the floor. Calm, curious. He did not speak. He kept drawing. At one point, Sterling saw what the boy was drawing. It was the chamber, the stove, the 2 chairs, the line of laundry. The boy was drawing his home. Sterling put his face in his hands. Eleanor sat across from him with her own bowl. She ate. She let him cry. When he could speak, he said one word. "How?" She set down her spoon. "How what, Mr. Sterling? How is this? How is this possible?" She thought about it. She did not gloat. She did not lecture. She said, "Your stoves shout, Mr. Sterling." A pause. "My hearth tells a story." He looked at her. I do not understand, he said. I know, explain it to me. All right. She picked up her spoon. She took a bite of stew. She chewed. She swallowed. Your iron stove burns wood fast. It makes the iron hot. The hot iron makes the air hot. The hot air rises. The hot air leaks out the cracks at the top of your house. The cold air comes in at the bottom to replace it. So you burn more wood. So the iron gets hotter. So more hot air leaks out. So more cold air comes in. You are heating the whole gulch, Mr. Sterling, with your one stove. And losing. He stared at her. That is, that is what is happening in your house right now. Yes. Yes. My hearth is different. My hearth burns a small fire. Once. The smoke goes through the body of the stove, through 7 turns of brick. The smoke pays for its passage. It leaves all of its heat in the brick. The brick holds the heat. The brick warms my floor. My floor warms my feet, my walls, the boy's blanket, the bowl in your hands. And around this room is a mountain. The mountain does not let the cold in. The mountain has been warm for 10,000 years. The mountain will be warm for 10,000 more. I did not fight the cold. I went underneath it. She paused. She looked at him. That is how, Mr. Sterling. He sat with the bowl in his hands. He did not know what to say. He had built houses for 30 years. He had been wrong for 30 years. It was a thing too big to fit inside his chest. He set down the bowl. He bent forward over the table. He wept. He wept for a long time. The boy watched, quietly. Eleanor reached across the table and laid her hand on the back of his head, very gently, the way you would touch a child. She did not speak. She let him weep. When he could speak again, he said, My wife, my daughters, they are dying. May has stopped shivering. My house is 40 degrees. I came up here to know if I had killed you. I did not come up here to. I did not come up here to ask. Eleanor stood up. She crossed to the line. She took down a thick wool shirt of Elias's. She handed it to him. Put this on, under your coat. Mrs. Wade, and these. She handed him a pair of dry wool socks. Mrs. Wade, I cannot ask you to. You did not ask, Mr. Sterling. She knelt and began to lace her own boots. Silas, she said over her shoulder, we are going down to town to get Mr. Sterling's family and maybe other families. You stay here. Stay by the stove. Do not open the door for anyone but Mama. Do you hear me? Yes, Mama. Recite to me. Stay by the stove. Do not open the door for anyone but Mama. Good boy. She turned to Sterling. He was staring at her. Mrs. Wade. Eleanor. Eleanor. Yes, Jacob. Why? She straightened up. She buttoned her coat. She looked at him. Because Adelaide is not guilty, she said. Because the girls are not guilty. Because if I leave them down there to die, I become the kind of person who lets children freeze to make a point. And I am not going to be that. I am going to be the kind of person who opens the door. She picked up the lantern. Come, she said. We do not have time. He stared at her one more second. Then he stood up. He laced his boots. He followed her out into the storm. The descent was easier than the climb because they were going downhill. The descent was harder than the climb because Sterling was not this time climbing toward what he feared. He was climbing back into it. He led her to his house. The wind had risen again. The door was buried. He had to dig it out with his hands. When he finally pushed it open, he could see his breath in the parlor. Adelaide was on the floor with the girls. She had pulled them to her. She had wrapped all 3 of them in every coat in the house. The fire was out. The stove was a black, useless lump. She looked up. Her face was the color of old paper. She saw her husband. She saw the woman behind him. For a second, she did not understand. Then she did. Her eyes filled. You came, she whispered. Eleanor knelt beside her. She put a hand on May's cheek. The cheek was cold, but the girl was breathing. Shallow, slow. She is alive, Eleanor said. We have to move now. Where? To my home. Adelaide stared at her. Your hole. My home, Mrs. Sterling. Yes, quickly. Adelaide looked at her husband. Sterling nodded. Just once. He bent down. He picked up May. He cradled her against his chest. Eleanor picked up Ruth Ann. Adelaide stood up. She was unsteady. Sterling caught her elbow with his free hand. Adelaide? Yes. Eleanor was right. About everything. I know, Jacob. I know you know. Walk, Jacob. Walk. They walked. On the way back up the mountain, they stopped at the parsonage. Sterling did not even ask. Eleanor turned off the road and walked through the snow to the door and pounded. Reverend Whitfield opened it. Behind him, in a freezing parlor, sat Hattie Holloway, wrapped in 3 quilts, her lips blue. She saw Eleanor. Eleanor saw her. Hattie. Get up. Now. Eleanor. Child, we are all right. You are not all right. Get up. The Reverend stared at her. Mrs. Wade, we could not impose. Reverend, there is no impose. There is alive and there is dead. Get your wife. Get your coat. Walk. He looked at her. He looked at his wife. Hattie Holloway, who had not asked anyone in the town for help in 31 years, was looking at her husband with eyes that said, please. The Reverend nodded. He got his coat. They picked up 4 more on the way up. The school teacher and her cousin. 2 children whose father was lost in the storm and whose mother was sick. The blacksmith's pregnant wife, whose husband had gone for the doctor 4 hours ago and not come back. Each one was easier than the last. By the time the small grim line of them reached Eleanor's tunnel mouth at 3 in the afternoon, there were 11 people. She got them in. She moved Silas's mattress aside. She moved the table. She unrolled every blanket she had. She put May and Ruth Ann directly on the warm stone floor in front of the Keshelofen, with the goose-down quilt over both of them. Within 15 minutes, May's color started to come back. Adelaide Sterling watched her daughter's color come back, and she pressed her face into her husband's coat, and she sobbed without making a sound. Eleanor stirred the stew. She added water. She put on more bread. She thought of Cora. Cora, are you warm? She did not know yet that Cora was warm. She did not know yet that Cora's small Keshelofen was holding its heat the way it had held heat for 40 winters. She did not know yet that Cora was sitting in her chair by her own warm stove, alive, sipping chicory, talking quietly to the photographs of her dead. She would find out, but not for 2 more days. The storm raged for 2 more days. It buried Silver Pine. It killed 60 head of cattle on the lower ranches. It collapsed 3 barns and 1 stable. It took the roof off the assayer's office. It killed nobody in town. Because by the time it was done, 28 people were inside Eleanor Wade's mountain. She had gone back down twice more. Once for the doctor's family. Once for an old prospector whose shack she had been told was leaning. The 3rd time she had wanted to go, Jacob Sterling had stopped her. He had stood in front of the tunnel door. Eleanor. Move, Jacob. Eleanor. Move. You will die out there. The wind has changed. There is a sheet of ice on the path you cannot see. You will go off the edge. I cannot let you. Silas needs his mother. I will go. She had stared at him. You will go. I will go. Jacob, you are 58 years old, and still standing. Eleanor Wade, I sent you up this mountain in October to die. You did not die. You came down and got my children. Let me go down and get someone else's. Let me make this small thing right. She had looked at him for a long second. She had moved aside. He had gone. He had come back 4 hours later with a young man named Pell, whose leg was broken and whose mother had died trying to keep him warm. Sterling had brought the young man in. He had set him gently on a blanket by the stove. He had stood up. He had looked at Eleanor. She was already gone when I got there, he had said. His face had been wet. I sat with her for a while. I told her she was a good mother. I do not know if she heard me. I came back with the boy. Eleanor had nodded. She had put a hand on his arm. She had said nothing. There was nothing to say. On the 2nd night, when most of the visitors were sleeping, Adelaide Sterling came over to where Eleanor was kneading the next morning's bread. Adelaide sat on the bench across from her. She watched Eleanor's hands work the dough. After a while, she said, Eleanor, yes, I have to tell you something. All right, it will be hard for you to hear. Eleanor looked up. I did not tell my husband to leave you alone in October. I know. I knew Elias. Yes, Elias did business with my husband. 2 years ago, He bought lumber from us for a survey shed. He came to our house. He had supper with us once. Yes, I liked him. A pause. Eleanor stopped kneading. She looked at Adelaide. Adelaide. Yes. Why are you telling me this? Adelaide was quiet a long moment. Because I let my husband call you a fool and I knew you were not. I sat in his parlor and listened to him tell men in town that you were unfit. I knew you were not. I said nothing. For 8 months, I said nothing. Adelaide. I am sorry, Eleanor. I am. Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron. She came around the table. She sat next to Adelaide. She thought about it for a long time. She thought, she is asking me to forgive her tonight. She thought, I do not know if I can forgive her tonight. She thought she did not knock on my door. She thought, but Hattie did. She thought, and Hattie was the same town. And Hattie did. She thought a long time. Then she spoke. Adelaide, yes, I am not going to tell you tonight that I forgive you. I do not know if I do. I would be lying if I said I did. I do not lie if I can help it, I know. But I will tell you this. You are warm tonight. Your daughters are warm tonight. You are eating my bread. You are sleeping on my floor. I did not save you because you deserved it. I saved you because you are alive. I do not save people because they deserve it. I save them because they are alive. Yes, that is all I have for you tonight, Adelaide. That is enough, Eleanor. Is it? It is enough. She reached out. She took Eleanor's hand. Eleanor let her. They sat that way for a while, the two of them, on the bench, in the warm stone room, while 26 other people slept around them. Outside, the wind continued. Inside, the stone remembered. The storm broke on the third morning. Eleanor woke before dawn. She got up. She walked to the tunnel mouth. She put her shoulder to the heavy oak door. She pushed. It would not move. She pushed harder. A crack. Light. She forced it open through 6 feet of drift. The cold hit her face. Real cold. The kind you remember. But not the killing cold. The killing cold was gone. She climbed up onto the snowbank. She stood, knee-deep in fresh snow, in a cold blue Colorado morning, with her breath rising in clouds, and she looked at the world. The aspens were buried to half their height. Her cabin was gone. Just a low mound of snow where it had been. The sun was coming up over the high peaks. The light hit the snow and the snow turned pink, then gold, then white. She thought of Elias. She thought of him saying, I will see you in the warm rock. She had seen him. She had seen him every day for 2 months. She started to laugh. She laughed and she could not stop laughing, and the laughing turned into crying, and the crying turned back into laughing, and she stood there in the snow making sounds that were not quite either thing. A hand on her shoulder. She turned. Jacob Sterling. He was wearing Elias's old wool shirt under his coat. His hair was gray. His face was scabbed from the cold. He was looking at the morning the way a man looks at a thing he never expected to see again. Eleanor. Yes. We are alive. Yes. You did this. No. Eleanor. Elias did this. Cora did this. Frida Wachter did this. I just listened. I did the listening, Jacob. That is what I did. He nodded. He stood with her in the snow. After a long minute, he said, Will you teach us? Teach you what? All of it. The stove, the hill, the way to listen. Will you teach us? She thought about it. Yes, she said, in the spring. I will teach anyone who will listen. I will listen. I know you will, Jacob. I will be the first. I know. She looked at him. You will not be the only one. He nodded. He looked at her. Eleanor. Yes, thank you. You are welcome, Jacob. She reached down. She picked up a handful of clean, fresh snow. She put it in her mouth. It tasted like the morning. It tasted like the world starting over. She thought, I am 27 years old. She thought, I am going to be all right. She thought, we are going to be all right. She turned. She climbed back down into the tunnel. She went to wake her son. 28 people were going to want breakfast. In the spring, Cora Bishop came down from her cabin and helped. She walked into Silver Pine in April, on a morning when the last snow was melting from the eaves, with her stick and her satchel and her dead husband's drawings. Sterling met her at the edge of town. He took off his hat. He bowed his head. "Mrs. Bishop," he said. "Mr. Sterling, I owe you an apology. Yes, I do not know how to make it." She looked at him a long time. Then she said, "Build the stoves, Mr. Sterling. Build the stoves I told my husband to build. Build them in every house in this town. That is how you make it." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Begin with the parsonage." "Yes, ma'am." "And Mr. Sterling, ma'am, tell the women in the dry goods store that I am not a witch. Tell them I am an old German woman who knew how to keep her house warm. Tell them I will take students." "Yes, ma'am." She walked past him. She walked into the town that had called her a witch for 40 years. She walked into it like a woman coming home. By the summer of 1886, 6 houses in Silver Pine had Wade hearths. By the summer of 1887, 22. By 1890, every new house built in the Gulch was at least partly subterranean and contained a cachalofen. Sterling built them. He built them to Cora's drawings. He built them with his son Wesley, who turned out to be a better mason than he was a saboteur. He built them in the parsonage. He built them in the schoolhouse. He built one in his own home. He tore out the iron stove and gave it to a man passing through, free, and told him to take it east, where it might do somebody some good in a milder climate. Eleanor did not become mayor. She did not run for the council. She did not get a building named after her. She raised her son. She lived quietly in her chamber inside the mountain. She added to it, year by year, a second chamber for sleeping, a small workshop where she copied out, in clean handwriting, Frida Wachter's journal, in English, and gave a copy to anyone who asked. She copied out Elias's letter to her too, parts of it, and pinned a small frame line of it above her hearth. "You are stronger than you know." She left it where Silas could see it every morning. She thought he should grow up reading that. She thought every boy should. The women of the town began coming to her. Not at first. At first they were ashamed. They had brought her dry bread. They had whispered. They had let their husbands speak for them. But shame, like grief, has a season. And by the summer of 1887, the women of Silver Pine were coming up the path to Eleanor Wade's tunnel, 1 or 2 at a time, with quiet questions in their mouths. The questions were not always about stoves. Mrs. Cobb from the dry goods store came on a Tuesday in June with a question about her marriage. The blacksmith's wife came in July with a question about her son. Adelaide Sterling came in August with a question about herself. Eleanor would set them at her table. She would pour chicory. She would listen. She would say very little, but she would listen the way the mountain had taught her to listen. Slow, patient, without trying to fix anything until the person speaking had said the thing they had really come to say. Hattie Holloway came every Thursday. Hattie Holloway just like the chicory. 20 years went by. Silas grew up. He was a quiet, serious boy who became a quiet, serious young man. He read his father's journals. He read Frida Wachter's. He read the letter his father had left for his mother more than once until the paper was soft. He went to school in Denver. He studied geology. He came home in the summers and worked the high cuts with his mother. He proposed to a school teacher named Sarah in 1903. They married in 1904. His mother gave them, as a wedding present, a small cachalofen for their first house. She told him, on the morning of his wedding, the only piece of advice she ever gave him about marriage. "Listen to her, Silas. Listen to her the way the mountain listens to the water. The water is right." He nodded. He did not understand it that morning. He understood it in pieces over the next 40 years. In 1906, the small Silver Pine Historical Society opened a one-room museum at the corner of Main and Aspen. It contained a few old photographs. It contained Elias Wade's geological tools and 3 of his journals. It contained Frida Wachter's journal in the original German, beside a clean English copy in Elias's careful hand. It contained a letter in a glass case that had been written in March of 1885 and read for the first time in November of that same year by a young widow who had thought she was alone. And on the wall of the museum, in a simple wooden frame, was a single line. It had been written by a woman named Eleanor Wade. She had written it on the inside cover of her copy of Frida Wachter's journal on a winter night in 1886, after the storm. Anyone could read it. It said, "Men build walls to fight the world. The wise woman invites the mountain into her home. One way shouts, the other tells a story. Always listen to the story. Eleanor Wade lived to be 83. She is buried beside her husband on the shoulder of the mountain in a small plot ringed with the strange smooth stones Elias used to bring home from his surveys. Her son visited the grave every spring until he died. His daughter visited it after him. If you are watching this tonight, if you are sitting in a warm room with a cup of something hot, with the wind maybe against the windows of your own house, I want you to think about Eleanor Wade. I want you to think about a 27-year-old widow in 1885 with a 6-year-old boy in a falling down cabin in a town that pitied her, who read a journal and put her hand on a warm stone and decided she would not die that winter. I want you to think about the iron stoves in your own life, the things you have been told are the only way, the certainties of the loud men, the pity of the kind women. The whole inherited weight of this is how it is done. I want you to ask yourself in the warm, honest dark what your tunnel is. What journal is sitting in your chest? What knowledge has been waiting 40 years for you to ask the right old woman the right question? What stone, somewhere on the property of your one wild life, is warm? Eleanor Wade did not know she was a hero. She just knew she was cold. And she listened. She listened to her husband, who had been gone 6 months. She listened to her great-grandmother-in-law, who had been gone 70 years. She listened to a Bavarian widow who had been called a witch for 40 years. She listened to a 6-year-old boy who said all right when she told him they were going to live inside a mountain. She listened to the mountain. And the mountain spoke back. It always does. It is always speaking. The only question is whether we are quiet enough and brave enough and broken open enough to hear what it has been saying all along. Invite the mountain into your home, build the fire small, build the stone large, hold the people you love, and listen. Always listen to the story. The end.